Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The small town of Riverview lay nestled between undulating hills. Its quaint streets lined with Victorian houses that whispered tales of the past. The river after which the town was named wound its way through the landscape like a silken ribbon, reflecting the overcast sky above. It was an idyllic setting, but beneath the seemingly peaceful exterior lay a darker reality that would soon shatter the community's tranquility. On an unremarkable Tuesday morning in late September, the sun struggled to break through the thick blanket of clouds, casting a muted light over Riverview. The air was damp with anticipation, though no one could quite place why. The day began like any other, with the sound of early risers stirring and the smell of fresh coffee drifting from kitchens across town. As the morning wore on, however, an unsettling aura began to permeate the atmosphere. In the heart of Riverview, a bustling bakery opened its doors to a small throng of regulars, unaware that outside its welcoming confines, a tragedy was silently unfolding. An unexpected radio broadcast crackled to life, jolting listeners with breaking news that would grip the town in fear. A local woman, Jessica Hartman, had been reported missing. Jessica, a beloved figure in Riverview, was known for her bright smile and kindness that extended to everyone she met. Her absence was felt deeply, sending ripples of concern throughout the close-knit community. Friends and family gathered, exchanging anxious whispers and fervent hopes, each one unconsciously clenching their fists as they clung to the uncertainty. In a town where everyone knew each other, Jessica's disappearance felt personnel overwhelmed that had sliced through the very fabric of Riverview. The victim. Jessica Hartman was more than just a name on a missing persons report. She was a vibrant force within her community. A nursing student in her final year at Riverview State University, Jessica was known for her dedication to helping others, always willing to lend a hand. Friends often recalled the countless afternoons spent at the local park, where she organized community health events and volunteered at the animal shelter, her laughter echoing through the air as she played with the dog. At 23, Jessica had her whole life ahead of her. She envisioned a future filled with patients who would rely on her care and compassion. Yet there remained an air of youthful spontaneity about her. A lover of the outdoors, she was frequently seen cycling along the river's edge or hiking the nearby trails, her auburn hair catching the autumn breeze. To many, she was more than a student. She embodied the spirit of Riverview, seamlessly woven into the fabric of daily life. But as the news of her disappearance spread, the community began to unravel the threads of who she truly was. Jessica's last known whereabouts were the festive Fall Harvest Festival, where she had attended with friends and seemed in good spirits, mingling and laughing in the brisk evening air. It wasn't until she failed to return home that concern began to escalate. With each passing hour, rumor and speculation added weight to the atmosphere of dread. Friends recounted their conversations with her leading up to her disappearance, noting any unusual behavior. To them, she remained a beacon of hope. But the chilling uncertainty gnawed at their hearts. As the night descended on Riverview, the reality of a beloved soul missing seeped into every corner. The crime scene. As the sun receded behind the hills, casting an eerie glow over Riverview, the search for Jessica intensified. Local authorities rallied, and volunteers sprung into action, fanning out across the town in hopes of uncovering clues. By dusk, local law enforcement focused its efforts on a wooded area bordering the river, where Jess had been known to take her bike rides. The early evening air felt heavier as officers from the Riverview Police Department combed through the underbrush, flashlights cutting through the encroaching darkness. Scratching sounds of branches breaking echoed as they moved cautiously, each crunch of foliage amplifying the tension. The atmosphere was thick with uncertainty, each moment stretching out painfully as families stood vigil, hope flickering like the last rays of daylight. As they trekked deeper into the woods, a patrolman's flashlight caught something glimmering among the fallen Lavesa silver charm bracelet. Unmistakably Jessica's. This discovery twisted the knot of fear, tightening in everyone's gut. Officials cordoned off the area, their demeanor shifting from concerned searchers to members of a critical investigation. The charm bracelet, now a grim token of their search, marked the unthinkable transition from a missing persons case to one that now bore the burden of suspecting foul play. Hours ticked by as forensics teams arrived, their flashlights illuminating the forest floor, revealing trampled grass and other signs of disturbance. A low murmur rippled among onlookers who had gathered at the edge of the scene, their expressions a mingling of dread and disbelief, as even the whispers of the wind seemed to carry the weight of their despair. What had happened to Jessica? Who could do such a thing in their peaceful town? With the sky darkening, the shock of the crime scene settled over Riverview like a heavy fog, each resident feeling the ripples of loss creep into their very bones. The early investigation. In the days following Jessica's disappearance, Riverview was enveloped in an uneasy haze. The once vibrant community became a backdrop for fear and suspicion as residents grappled with the reality that their peaceful town had been invaded by darkness. Investigators from the Riverview Police Department dedicated their resources to piecing together Jessica's final moments, a task fraught with urgency. Detective Mark Sullivan, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for unraveling complex cases, took the lead. His furrowed brow and steely gaze communicated both determination and concern as he met with Jessica's parents, offering them reassurance amid rising apprehension. As he listened to their accounts of her life, Sullivan made meticulous notes, seeking patterns, relationships, and anything that could uncover a potential suspect. Within days, the investigation began honing in on Jessica's social circle. Friends were interviewed and their statements recorded. A close-knit group had shared secrets and laughter. Beneath the surface, however, lay unexamined tension. Subtle hints of jealousy and rivalry emerged as some friends mentioned recurring conflicts surrounding a recent romantic interest Jessica had seemed to flourish. Detective Sullivan approached these revelations with caution, considering the intricate web of friendships and emotions that could cloud the truth. As the team reviewed digital clues, they sifted through Jessica's online presence for any communications with acquaintances and relatives that might provide leads. Social media offered a glimpse into her life, revealing photos of laughter, excitement, and those enigmatic undertones of youth's complexities. Meanwhile, forensic specialists continued to scour the wooded area, searching for further evidence that might reveal more about what transpired there. Each passing day heightened the urgency. The anxiety rippling through Riverview grew palpable. The air buzzed with whispers about who might be harboring secret sand if Jessica's fate could still be changed. The dead ends. As the investigation into Jessica Hartman's disappearance continued, the initial flurry of leads began to wane, giving way to a staggering realization. The trail was growing cold. Days turned into weeks, and the consensus among investigators was unsettling. The vibrant life of Riverview felt stifled under the weight of unanswered questions and lingering doubts. Detective Sullivan and his team became all too familiar with the feeling of dead ends, their once promising leads fading into thin air. Friends who had been opened arms one week now receded behind their walls of anxiety as secrets traversed the boundaries of loyalty. Inquiry into Jessica's romantic life yielded mixed results, revealing minor disputes that failed to suggest genuine malice. As Sullivan continued to interview friends, their stories began to intertwine into a murky narrative of youthful adolescent struggles, yet no one emerged as a clear suspect. Meanwhile, searches of the local area, every shrouded corner of the woods, every abandoned sheet yielded little more than disappointment. Each evening, as dusk settled over Riverview, the investigators' exhaustion mirrored the growing despair in the community. Flyers of Jessica's smiling face adorned every lamppost and storefront, but new sightings remained scarce, and every tip felt more like a whisper in the void. Frustration mounted. With little actionable evidence, forensic teams continuously examined Jessica's digital footprints, but the steady pulse of social media had grown convoluted. The detectives were left grappling with the complexity of interactions, parsing through seemingly mundane conversations for nuggets of truth. The emotional toll on those searching for Jessica began to surface. Watchful eyes lingered in the windows of Riverview. Friends exchanged anxious glances, and the unshakable feeling that someone knew more than they were saying settled over the town like a heavy shroud. Even Detective Sullivan found himself haunted by the absence of answers, wondering if a community that prided itself on togetherness had perhaps hidden truths lurking in the shadows. A break in the case. As autumn progressed, the once bright leaves began to rustle to the ground, signaling not just the change of seasons, but the pressing urgency under which the investigation operated. Days melded into weeks, and the emotional landscape of Riverview began to shift. Families and friends still clung to hope, but the community was showing signs of retreating into itself, grappling with the weight of a seemingly ceaseless absence. Yet, just as it seemed despair would reign, the thread of despair was illuminated by an unexpected revelation. A pair of hikers, oblivious to the storm of uncertainty brewing in town, ventured into the same wooded area that had become the focus of the search efforts. As they navigated the trails, they stumbled upon a small, weathered backpack, partially buried among the fallen leaves. A glimmer of curiosity prompted them to investigate further. The sight of the backpack immediately sent apprehension rippling through the hikers. It bore an uncanny resemblance to the one Jessica had been known to carry. Rushing to inform authorities, they felt a rush of adrenaline at what might lie ahead. The backpack was retrieved with cautious urgency, and a palpable sense of determination reverberated through the precinct as the forensic team was called in. Inside the bag, investigators found personal items. Jessica's textbooks, her journal filled with sketches and musings, and a crumpled photograph of a group of friends, including Jessica, one of whom had recently become a figure of suspicion. The discovery reignited old suspicions and new questions. Had this backpack been discarded in haste? Did it belong to Jessica? Or was it part of a cruel masquerade? With new evidence in hand, Sullivan and his team swiftly gathered the necessary intel on those associated with the photograph, triggering an avalanche of investigations anew. Just as hope flickered back to life, Riverview braced for the revelations that could change everything. The urgency echoed in Sullivan's mind. The pieces were finally beginning to align in a way they hadn't before. illuminating paths that had previously appeared dark and uncertain. The suspect. With the discovery of Jessica's backpack, the facade of tranquility among Riverview began to crack, revealing undercurrents of tension that had long simmered beneath the surface. The photograph extracted from the bag proved pivotal. It featured Jessica alongside a familiar Facilium Rivers, a close friend from high school who had recently descended into a haze of erratic behavior following a break. His smile in the picture was juxtaposed with a subtle shadow that now loomed large in the minds of those investigating. Detective Sullivan wasted no time in tracking down Liam, whose alibis from the night of Jessica's disappearance had been scant at best. Upon first encountering him, Sullivan noted a nervous energy in Liam's demeanor. His hands fidgeted, and the vibrant blue of his eyes betrayed a depth of anxiety that raised a plethora of questions. As they sat across from each other in the small interrogation room, Sullivan laid out the evidence of Jessica's belongings, the latent connection between theme and watched as Liam's expression changed from concern to dread. With every question Sullivan posed, a slight tremor seemed to infiltrate Liam's words. Despite his initial insistence that he had not seen Jessica in days, the detective's probing brought forth inconsistency. Liam's stories began to tangle, revealing emotional turmoil that bordered on desperation. He shared fragments of recent conversations with Jessica, fueled with jealousy as she navigated a budding romance with another class. The more Liam spoke, the more Sullivan sensed that he was straddling a precarious line between affection and resentment. An emotional whirlwind had clearly enveloped him, and the detective felt the intensity of that storm as he pushed harder. Unyielding in his pursuit of truth, Sullivan confronted Liam with the photograph, pressing him to articulate where he had been that fateful night. The question hung heavy in the air, and shadows spiraled as the weight of possibility descended on both men. The walls of the interrogation room felt as if they were whispering secrets, as Liam's eyes darted, searching for a safe place to land amidst the turbulence brewing inside. Riverview held its breath, eager for clarity, while Liam remained at the center of an eclipsed narrative that threatened to engulf them all. The trial. Months after Jessica Hartman's disappearance, the case transformed from a haunting mystery into a palpable courtroom drama that gripped Riverview. As the trial commenced, a palpable tension filled the air, as the community, still grappling with grief, gathered to witness the proceedings against Liam Rivers. The town's intimacy morphed into a collective anxiety, a palpable weight carried by each person who entered the fraying courthouse. The courtroom was packed with familiar faces, their shared heartbreak woven into expressions of resolve. Detective Sullivan sat in a corner, prepared to recount the all-consuming investigation that led to the trial, his notes detailing the depths of his journey with chilling precision. Liam, once a friend to many, now sat at the defendant's table, a stark reflection of a life caught in turmoil. As the trial unfolded, testimonies revealed a profound narrative of betrayal and heartache. Friends recounted Liam's growing obsession with Jessica and details about the night they attended the Fall Harvest Festival, painting a portrait of a young man struggling with rejection. On the stand, Sullivan described how the investigation pivoted after the discovery of Jessica's belongings, revealing the tightly woven connections between love, loss, and anger. In contrast, the defense painted a picture of a young man plagued by grief. Declaring Liam merely a victim of circumstance, they begged the jury to consider his emotional state, suggesting that his erratic behavior stemmed from the recent breakup that left him reeling. Resistance mounted as prosecutors laid out their case, driving toward an undeniable point of crime of passion veiled by the shrouds of friendship. The jury deliberated, tension thickening in the air as they pondered the evidence and the emotions attached to every witness statement. Onlookers held their breaths as hours stretched into a seemingly endless spiral, anticipation weighing heavily. Finally, as the sun hovered low in the sky, casting an amber glow through the courthouse windows, the jury returned with their verdict. Silence fell, punctuated only by the distant sound of rustling papers. As the foreman stood to speak, the moment became a defining point, not just for the individual lives entangled in the case, but for an entire community wrapped tightly in shared loss. Seeking closure and justice. The aftermath. With the jury's verdict delivered, the aftermath rippled through Riverview like waves spreading from a central disturbance. The courtroom erupted into tensioned whispers and guarded glances as the implications of their decision settled like a lead weight on the community's conscience. Whether relief or sorrow washed over the faces of the townsfolk, they struggled to reconcile the reality of betrayal with their memories of laughter shared under autumn leaves. In the days that followed, the lingering shadows of Jessica's case haunted every corner of Riverview. The once cherished gathering spots, the bakery, the park seemed imbued with a palpable sadness. Flyers bearing Jessica's radiant smile remained tacked to walls as both a tribute and a stark reminder of the life taken too soon. Each glance at those images was like a dagger, puncturing the air with reminders of the loss that woven itself into their lives. For Sullivan, the trial marked a cathartic yet bittersweet culmination of his work. He drove through the streets that had been the backdrop of his obsession for months, with familiar billboards and lampposts offering fleeting reminders of Jessica's presence. The effect was jarring. The community felt like a ghost town, veiled in the web of their collective memories, and Sullivan found himself reflecting on the emotional toll each case carried with it. As Liam faced the consequences of his actions, the town was left to grapple with the loss of two lives victim whose spirit remained an inseparable part of Riverview, and the suspect who had once filled the same spaces with joy and camaraderie. Friends began to talk, unfold their thoughts on the complications of love, jealousy, and the fragility of relationships. The courtrooms might have reached a conclusion, but the dialogue within the community was just beginning. Each day, individuals sought solace in the mundane, doing their best to piece their lives back together. Students returning to class, families showing up at their favorite restaurants, albeit with reserved laughter. Yet under the surface, an undercurrent of change began to manifest. Mental health resources were ushered into the discourse, aiming to address the collective trauma the case had revealed. Town meetings became a space for healing and confronting lingering questions, a community seeking to fortify itself against such tragedies in the future. In the end, Jessica's legacy would orchestrate a subtle transformation in Riverview, a reminder that even in the face of darkness, the threads of hope and resilience could weave a tapestry of unity, connecting a grieving town while honoring Theo. Memories of those lost. Reflection. Months after the trial concluded, the lingering echoes of Jessica Hartman's tragedy shaped the fabric of Riverview, a town forever altered by grief and resolution. On the banks of the familiar river where Jessica once laughed among friends, the community gathered one somber afternoon to hold a memorial. It became a moment of collective reflection, a space to honor not only Jessica's life, but also the lessons learned from her loss. As the sun began its slow descent, casting shimmering reflections on the water, attendees found strength in vulnerability. Friends and family shared stories, not just of heartache, but of Jessica's spiritual laughter, her compassion, her relentless optimism. This gathering became a crucible for catharsis, where emotions like sorrow and anger morphed into an outpouring of solidarity. Detective Sullivan stood at the outskirts, observing the tapestry of connections woven through the narrative of love and loss. He had dedicated months to seeking justice, yet he realized the heart of his work transcended beyond the courtroom. It was about building a community that recognized the fragility of life, understanding that vulnerability could lead to strength. As night cloaked the horizon and candles flickered against the more profound moments of silence, Riverview emerged, transformed. The river flowed steadily, a forgiving reminder that while time could bring healing, it also bore witness to the scars etched into their collective memory. Each individual carried a fragment of Jessica within them, imbuing the town with renewed purpose, a commitment to nurturing love over jealousy, community over isolation, and courage over fear.